When you can show people, wow, that problem that a minute ago I thought was unsolvable, turns out there's this breakthrough, this new invention, this new technology, and we can bring it to that problem, and maybe we could solve it at a global scale. That brings a lot of hope, a lot of inspiration, And so a lot of times I'm just putting people through that cycle, trying to help them see and appreciate the value of the new inventions.
I spoke recently to the head of Meta Lab. They help birth companies like Slack and Coinbase and things like
Cool.
that. And he told me that there's a huge talent war right now, which I was happy to hear because
Yeah.
it's not been a great market for tech talent lately. But he said in particular for 0 to 1 talent, that's the hardest thing for them to find right now. And as AI makes other things, the craft piece that we're
Mm,
talking about, easier, more replicable, like that 0 to 1 talent is something that he is really looking for, and that you are
wow.
also looking for, more people
Yeah, I
like
like
that.
the
What
way you put that.
what are ways that people who want to go beyond optimization or craft, what do you see the most valuable things for 0 to 1 type building skills that people need to have or support that they need to
It's
have?
it's really interesting you put it that way. Just as an aside, the if you think about the AIs we have now, they are essentially trained on everything humans have ever done, or at least written. And and so you could expect them to be quite good at craft. You could expect them to look at something and say, "Oh, I need to optimize this." I've seen, because the AI knows every other thing like it that's ever
Right.
been done. You say, "Okay, well, you could step up to here. You could step up to the state of the art, step up to whatever the best version is." Like I don't know, you could probably take a violin performance, feed it into an AI and say, fix this to make it sound like a Chinese violin prodigy. um,
Mhm.
and it can do that. But what we're having a hard time with in AI is going beyond that. An AI can go beyond the state of the art essentially by using a random number generator. But we're having a real hard time figuring out, how does a computer become creative? How does a computer do that 0 to 1?
Yeah.
How
Make
is it
novel discoveries.
how does it make novel discoveries? How is it truly creative? And it can, with that random number generator, sometimes it can still stumble upon things that we're like, yeah, that's pretty cool. But that's a different thing. And some humans do that. Even some creative humans, that might be their algorithm. It's just like, I'm just going to try shit and see what happens, and maybe something will be good. But the truth is, there's some version of intuition behind it. There is some creative process in humans we haven't figured out how to make the computers do. But yeah, I think it's a very similar thing. So if you in your career, you certainly want to be compassionate with people who've invested heavily in their craft. We have people who've spent their whole career trying to get really good at building user interfaces, or there's authors. I'm not like a real author. I just writing out of desperation. But there are people who are novelists, or
Mhm.
they've honed that craft and they're really good at it. And you don't want to sort of yank the rug out from under them. But at the same time, a lot of the things humans are doing is kind of like, it's like work cosplay. We have a lot of people doing things that we don't actually need done. They're doing a job that it's kind of like we're just babysitting them in the workforce. And they don't love the job. They might be doing what you think of as a craft, but they haven't invested in it enough to feel a personal connection to it. They're just doing it for the paycheck. That's not a really healthy life for a human anyway. So these are the kinds of things, the dangerous things, the menial things, the boring things, the repetitive things. Let's farm that out to robots and AI and let the computers do that stuff, and free you and me up and all these folks up to do something more meaningful that only a human could do. And I think it's, one way I like to think about that is, if you just take free time as an example, you know, in all of human history, free time is probably mostly an anomaly. Most people had to work just to keep from dying, keep their kids from dying,
Yeah.
keep from getting eaten by something bigger, that kind of stuff. And the Industrial Revolution was probably really the first moment, and this is a century ago, where the machines became so powerful and useful that they could do the work of hundreds of people or thousands of people, and free time was probably invented around then. And so in the last century, we had to figure out, what do you do with free time? And so we invented the entertainment industry, for one. Books, this isn't something that humans have had for very long. Printing presses from like 400 years ago, right? the last century, we scaled up this whole book publishing thing. So that was kind of a window in time where it's like, oh, we have free time. We'll make books, we'll print books, we'll read books. Cool. Now we're kind of in a post-book world. This is probably one of the last books that'll ever be bothered to be,
I hope
made.
not.
Yeah, I hope not. But, we'll do it as a hipster dalliance or something. But, books are not strictly necessary going forward. And so, but we also made movies, TV, video games, elections, all these kinds of things we're doing to fill that free time. And we really scaled up on that. So now if you look at a typical life for an American, you could say, I don't know, half of their waking hours they work and the other half they're doing this stuff. And it's mostly entertainment. But and in spite of all that, we complain about not having enough time. And so that's kind of baffling in one sense, but now that a robot is coming to do the other half, if a robot or AI takes your job and does all those things, now you get twice as much free time. What are you going to do with it?